Okay, now Radhika will present the next presentation.
Yeah, I was very amused when you talked about watching Hindi movies in Somalia, because I have a lot of Somali students in my ESL class, and because of them, because they're always asking me about Hindi movies, and I don't usually watch them, I'm having to read out about Shah Rukh Khan and all these guys really go on. So that's another globalization of the popular culture. Now in the same theme as image, the creation of feminine image, I call my paper The Irony of Being a Hindu Woman. Because to begin with, in no other culture have women occupied such extremely opposing positions as in India. Now, in the biblical version of Genesis, you have Eve being created out of Adam's rib. So that firmly establishes her secondary position. There's no doubt about it. And later on, because she is tempted by the serpent, that gives you the message, women are trouble, and they have to be kept under control. So that firmly establishes the secondary role or position of women. But in the Hindu version of Genesis, it's very different, because we have Manu, the progenitor of the human race. When he wants a wife, he sits down and he does a homa, which is a big fire sacrifice. And from the fires of the sacrifice emerges Ela, the first woman, who then, and they together create the human race. So therefore, the first woman is actually a blessing from this homa, a sacred blessing. And she's also associated with Vak, which means sacred word. So and in some instances in the Rig Veda, she's also referred to as the teacher, as Manu's teacher. She teaches him the rules of dharma. So you see, so women really began with a very good image. They were accorded wisdom, and of course the goddess of wealth and the goddess of learning are also female, Lakshmi and Saraswati. And in the Upanishads, God is merely referred to as Tat, which is neutral, gender neutral. And then you have the concept of the Ardhanarishwara, which is half man, half woman, which is unique to Hinduism, emphasizing the equal partnership of male and female energies. Then you have gods, then also there's the idea that gods are really rendered impotent without their Shaktis. So every god, even the bachelor gods like Ganesh, Ayyappa, and Hanuman, must have a Shakti, even if it's just a symbolic one. And so Shakti, the mother goddess, is the real power behind the universe. So, and then we are then again told that in the Vedas, women were educated and participated in politics and social matters. And there are several sages that are mentioned in the Upanishads. In the 3rd century sage Katyayana's recordings, there are several female teachers of grammar. And Patanjali's recordings of 200 BC, we know that women too were invested with the sacred thread before beginning their education. So it would be fairly logical to expect that women living in a culture that has such a tradition of reverence for women, in such a tradition, women would have equal. In fact, I would think we should really have a higher status than women, because we are the support of the universe. I love that. And indeed, India is one of the few nations that had a woman prime minister, and she was not just a puppet prime minister, as we know. She was quite a sizable force, and it's still ruled, backstage by a woman, though not many of us like to mention her. The Indian Constitution is one of the most progressive in the world and guarantees equal rights to all citizens, and India was one of the first nations to give women the right to vote. But unfortunately, if you look at statistics, the statistics gives us another picture. A 2001 study commissioned by the United Nations reports, and I'll go through it very quickly because I'm sure Vanaja is going to expand on this. In 1999, 25,000 women were killed as a result of assault, and many more left maimed and scarred as a result of violent attempts on their lives. Men outnumbered women. Unlike other countries where women enjoy equality, women outlive men because women have a longer lifespan. Only 50% of women are literate as opposed to 65.5 men. Fewer women in the paid workforce than men, and women work longer hours with fewer wages. Women still face discrimination in land and property rights, and most women do not get a share in parental property. And I'll let Vanaja go on with the rest of it. I'm sure she's going to tell you all that. Anyway, it would assume that Indian women, therefore, are not really as equal as we would expect them to be. And so what happened? What happened to this tremendous Vedic freedom and the reverence accorded to women in ancient times? Now, if you ask Hindus what happened, they would all say, well, they'll blame it on foreign invasion. Like, when in doubt, blame the Muslim invaders, right? And so, for many years, Hindu scholars have insisted that these invaders carried away and dishonored women. Therefore, women had to be removed from the foreline of society and kept in isolated backyards, draped in veils, lest they be dishonored. Now, as a feminist and a social activist, I find this answer too easy to pat. Because, first of all, for a society that is suffering invasions, wouldn't it be better to empower the entire population to fight the invaders? After all, women, both in legend and myth, have proved in many ways to be good fighters. You have Kaikai, the third wife of King Dasharatha, had to rescue him. Then you had Queen Satyabhama had to rescue Krishna from Mahishasura. And then, of course, we are all proud of our Jhansi Ki Rani. So, you know, Indian women have proved that they're good combatants. Secondly, even if it was so, how can a man justify killing a baby, his own daughter, just because she's a girl? I mean, that's female infanticide. I mean, somehow that does not impress me at all. Or a husband beat and exploit his wife just because his king happens to be a foreigner. I mean, it doesn't really make much sense. Thirdly, the concept of dowry as it exists in India today does not exist anywhere else in the world. The fact that if a dowry is inadequate in the eyes of the groom's family, a woman can be conveniently done to death, leaving the groom to marry again, certainly doesn't exist anywhere in the world, and most certainly not amongst the Muslim invaders. As for sati, the first case of sati was recorded in the Mahabharata long before Islam was even thought of. And so we really can't blame the foreign invaders for problems that are really deeply rooted within our own psyche. The other point is that when I was about 18 or 19, I was taken to see the Shankaracharya of Sringeri. And I was sitting there, and there was an American student who had come to do his field work or something. And he asked the Swami, why is it that Hindu women are kept, 5 minutes more only?
Oh, 6 minutes.
Okay. Well, he was asked, why is it that Hindu women are kept away and cloistered? And the Swamiji said, well, in America, where would you keep your precious jewels? And the American said, well, I guess in a bank locker. And he says, well, in India, women are precious, so we keep them at home. And everyone there was very impressed, but I was bothered. Because we are precious, but we're not objects. And that is something that I think feminists have been trying to make that point. Now, I was going to go on and tell you a little bit about how this whole image of the female image was created or developed from within our own texts. And if you examine our texts, especially, let's take the Ramayana, because everybody likes to, condemn poor Sita. But as the epitome of, not you, you're quite the opposite, Sita. As the epitome of the Indian womanhood, chaste, non-complaining, and faithful. Whereas there are a lot of women in the Mahabharata who are very dynamic, like Kunti, Draupadi, but they're sort of glossed over. And even Draupadi, because she dared mock Duryodhana, ended up being gang raped in front of, her husbands and the whole court, and the elders didn't do anything to help her because of the male code of honor. They couldn't do anything because they ate Duryodhana's salt, and so, so it's a very skewed sense of honor. But before condemning Sita, let's examine first how her image was developed, because there are other resources that tell us that Sita didn't begin as this wimpy character that we have, Valmiki's wimpy character. When Valmiki took his story of Ramayana from stories and legends that were already there. And in those, in the folkloric versions of the Ramayana, of Sita actually does, in the second half of the story, the Uttarakanda, where Rama comes and finds her in the forest, he expels her because the Dhobi says that she's not been chased, so he sends her off again. Then he finds her years later with his children, and he wants her to go through this fire purification again. And at that point, there are the folkloric version is very different from what the Valmiki or the Tulsi Ramayana said. Here she refuses, and she renounces Rama, and she wants to give her sons her matrilineal heritage. And Valmiki tells her, no, why don't you go back? And she shouts at Valmiki, saying, that Rama who gave you so much suffering, she says, I hope I never see him again, and I'd rather die, and that she kills herself. So in other words, I'd rather die than go live in humiliation with him. And in that particular tribe, there's a tribe in North India where they will still not accept grooms who come from that Ayodhya area because of how, which is a bit extreme, yes. But anyway, so how many minutes left? 2. Well, so let me just skip all the other examples, and I'll just say that the Valmiki Ramayana establishes 3 points. First of all, the denigration of women. This is Kaikeyi demanding so that shows you that women are troublemakers again, because she demands the throne for her child. Then women are weak and have to be protected. And thirdly, this chastity is very important. Now, the idea of chastity being very important was very significant, because Valmiki's Ramayana emerged at a time when society was in transition from a tribal to a Aryan society. And in tribal societies, women have a lot more equality, and they have, and plus they have heritage is through the mothers. It's matrilineal. And so chastity is not that important. But they were transiting into this other society which was patrilineal. And and everyone knows motherhood is a matter of fact, fatherhood is a matter of opinion. So all of a sudden, the female reproductive process had to be controlled, and therefore, the female reproductive had to be controlled, and therefore, all of a sudden, chastity became a big thing for women. So Valmiki established chastity as a big thing, and then in the Kalidas added on this Kamba Ramayana, the Uttarakanda, where she goes away and where she goes away again, and so he establishes that women have to suffer in silence, and death is preferable to complaining, because she preferred to die rather than come back. And Tulsi Ramayana, which was written in the 6th century, established that Lakshman Rekha episode, which is not found in the original Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana. This is the line that Lakshmana draws around Sita and says, don't step out. If you step out of it, you'll be in danger. And so that establishes the fact that women are okay so long as they don't step out of the boundary. And thus you have so now these are stories that we're told from childhood, by our mothers, grandma, everybody. And they're ingrained in the Hindu psyche. So let's not look outside ourselves looking for blame. We have to basically change our attitudes from within. But then I must leave you on a very optimistic note, however, because on the other hand, I do think that Indian women have progressed a lot. The status of Indian women has progressed a lot in India, but progress is always slow. But and we shouldn't become complacent. We should keep examining our own attitudes and forging ahead.